Good morning to day two. Thank you all for coming in person today. You know, if this pandemic has informed us about anything, it's that this virtual world, this virtual training world, it's going to work. And it works really, really well. But events like iFEST and ITSEC for sure, there's a place for being in person, connecting, making contact, and quite frankly, just communicating face to face. So for those of you that are watching, and whether or not you're going to stream this on YouTube or whatever your platform of choice is, thank you for doing that as well. When you do that at your time and place of your own choosing, or you're probably doing that on your own time, which I think says a lot about this community in general. My name is Frank Kelly. I'm the Vice President at the Defense Acquisition University. And our mission at DAU is to train and educate our defense acquisition workforce, which numbers about 180,000 men and women who have two objectives: to improve our acquisition system and process, and also to make sure that we ensure that we have positive outcomes for our warfighters out there. I'm also a retired Marine, and during my time in the Marine Corps, I had a chance to go down to Orlando, and it was the first time I ever had to encounter NTSA. That was back in 2007. I have not missed a time where I've not been engaged with NTSA, whether or not it's at ITSEC or iFEST like we are today. And I hope it's something that stays with me for a long time. And I will be at ITSEC for sure. And your staff has done an absolutely fantastic job. They might ask for a raise. You are probably not paying them enough. So there, you got that favor from Frank Kelly, but they have done a fantastic job. I'm also a huge fan of this event. This is my third iFEST, and I've had a variety of different roles in the 3 years that I've been engaged with iFEST, and I look forward to participating in next year's. But this iFEST is not over quite yet. My job this year is I get the chance to introduce our government keynote speaker, and I'm really excited. Bev, Seay, and I have said, when were you at Orlando? When was I at Orlando? And we may not have known who we were at that time, but I've learned a couple of things right now. She is one humble person with some tremendous ideas. And she also has a pretty good sense of humor, which she just shared with me about 7 minutes ago. So I have to thank you for that. Bev is the Southeast Regional Director for the Department of Defense National Security Innovation Network, and it goes by Ensign. Put those letters together, and you'll see how that comes together. In her role as Regional Director, Bev is responsible for leading the collaboration between academia and entrepreneurs, which would mean industry and government, across a pretty vast region in the Southeast, everywhere from Key West all the way up to Memphis. That's a pretty large region. She also has some other passions that I'm sure she's going to share with us today. Not only has she's become a champion for women in STEM careers by helping fund programs focused on introducing young women to math, science, and engineering. Oftentimes, she's been the only woman in a boardroom, and she's prioritized cultivating the next generation of female leaders, especially in the computer sciences. In 2021, the Orlando Business Journal recognized her as the Businesswoman of the Year. And I love to be able to say this about people. I am not doing it justice. Just look her up. When you Google Bev Seay, you'll get pages and pages and pages of these accolades. But it's all about being a businesswoman with a vision. So she also served on the Board of Trustees for the University of Central Florida at a time that was particularly challenging because of the pandemic, but she also had a particularly challenging mission. And for those of you that know UCF, you know what I'm talking about. It's my honor today, though, as my job today to introduce to you the Honorable Bev Seay.
Thank you, General, for that kind introduction and warm iFEST welcome. It's my pleasure to join you today to talk about the global strategic imperative of meeting the human capital challenge from the perspective of securing our national security, and why cultivating partnerships of problem solvers is a strategy of choice for all stakeholders, from government to industry to academia. In a time of breakthrough technology and accelerating innovation, people remain the vital element to achieving success. This is true whether you're an entrepreneur, operate a small business, a large multinational corporation, or a governmental organization. Even while the headlines emphasize digital transformation and advanced weapon systems, it's always been people that make the difference, and this is especially true of the Department of Defense. The National Defense Strategy says people are our most valuable resource and states warfighting success requires recruiting, developing, and retaining a high-quality military and civilian workforce, and calls for a broad revision to talent management. This strategic goal is perhaps not novel, nor is the emphasis on the importance of workforce in achieving the mission. What is unique to the DoD, though, are the consequences of failure. Our national security depends on highly skilled STEM talent and other exceptionally talented Americans joining the Department of Defense and other government agencies. This is critical to preserving our competitive emerging technology advantage and having a force of resilient personnel trained for the unpredictable global operating environment. To be blunt, it's critical to preserving our freedom and our way of life. The DoD cannot meet our contemporary and future talent needs with a better recruitment campaign or tweaks to talent management methods. We must fundamentally change the way the department solves problems. And going it alone is not an option. Collaboration, which was once thought as a nice to have, has emerged not only as necessary, but critical to defense innovation success. Innovation is a buzzword you hear everywhere, and for the Department of Defense, it came of age when the Defense Innovation Initiative was established in 2014. Because of growing concerns within the national security community that the so-called peace dividend that should have manifested at the conclusion of the Cold War was displaced by a multipolar, complex environment that was making it harder for the United States to maintain technical dominance and overmatch. The rise of non-state actors and hybrid threats pointed to a future where the United States could no longer guarantee its way of life if the DoD continued doing business as usual. As a result, at least a dozen defense innovation organizations have been created by the Department of Defense, including the National Security Innovation Network in 2016. The specific strategic niche Ensign fills in the DoD innovation ecosystem is to work across all service branches to build a network that can help expand the department's problem-solving capabilities through a focus on the human capital component. In summary, we are creating partnerships of problem solvers. The human capital theory of defense innovation is not the one you hear enough about, and we're working on changing that. The other theories of defense innovation get there faster through technology investments, or buy not build by engaging the private sector, or get there faster by reforming the system, are all relevant too. However, talent and the network theory of defense innovation is not just additive. It serves as a hedge against the strategic uncertainty of all the others. Said differently, what if the United States does not get there first? How will it react and adapt to this new reality? If the United States cannot buy not build everything that it needs, how will it fill the remaining capability gaps? Will there ever be a system of business processes that will allow us to get there faster enough? Truly, we need an all-of-the-above approach, and human capital component is central. Government, industry, and academia must work together. Government doesn't have all the answers or the single-handed capability to solve the talent pipeline challenge. Yet, they have significant needs and can provide a valuable learning laboratory. Industry and entrepreneur community are developing innovations that have potential for dual use, military and civilian. And they have interest in additional markets for their products. And then there's academia, who's at the front of the funnel with educating and influencing the talent of today and the future. And the academy needs feedback about what skills are required for their graduates to ultimately be successful. You see, we're dependent on each other for success. Or to borrow a popular expression of the times, we're all in this together. There's a role and benefit for each of us to collaborate. Yes, ultimately, our national security is at stake, and we should all care about that. But also, the relevancy of academic institutions and vitality of the American industrial base suffers if they go it alone. Collaboration is critical. Partnerships are the pathway to achieving repeatable and outsized impacts that transcend what any individual or sector can accomplish on its own. History has many examples of leaders and organizations that missed warning signs and the window to adapt. We know what the data says about our talent needs. We're clear about the mission. And we have the strategy. So, what needs to be done? Technology has greatly shifted the talent and skills landscape where the demand for highly educated and skilled workforce exceeds the supply of technically skilled labor. This may sound like a classic supply and demand scenario with textbook levers to rebalance the model, but there's nothing routine or traditional about the interventions that are required. The talent pipeline challenge for the Department of Defense is exacerbated by a confluence of issues. First, societal trends and generational value shifts have changed the way military and government service is valued. According to the most recent Personnel and Readiness Report, Preserving Our Competitive Advantage, which has exacerbated the DoD's ability to compete for hiring and retaining a workforce with 21st century skills. Second, the pool of eligible candidates for military service in the U.S. continues to decline. Third, minority populations by race and ethnicity are growing as a percentage of the U.S. population, yet diversity is significantly lagging in the DoD workforce. And fourth, lagging curriculum and early career experiential learning opportunities are needed that teach resilience and emotional behavioral skills to cope with adversity. We know that the talent challenge cannot be met with the same methods of the past. The U.S. will not allow another Sputnik moment. The interventions required are as diverse as the task at hand, and the common theme is collaboration. Overall, in the era ahead, we must diversify and expand our partnerships to bring in new talent and engage communities who are historically underrepresented, not only to help meet hiring needs to have a resilient force as diverse as our country, but also to engage diverse entrepreneurial problem solvers. Building relationships with historically underrepresented communities will help close the awareness and knowledge gap of what a career in national service could look like. For example, to open up opportunities to collaborate in solving a DoD mission partner problem, which could lead to a small business innovation research funding. How to get experience, navigate the hiring process, and more are critical to filling the talent pipeline. There are economic development benefits to these underrepresented communities and their localities when small businesses flourish and citizens discover the pathways to serve their country as a civilian. While progress has been made to build a larger innovation ecosystem in academia, laboratories, and industry, and INSIM's a big part of that, more must be done. As Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin says, we succeed through teamwork. With industry, increase their engagement in sponsoring student research in the 14 critical technology areas as identified by the Honorable Heidi Shyu, Deputy Secretary of Defense for Research and Engineering. Advise on the emerging skill and talent needs to execute digital transformation, and provide feedback on the characteristics of the best new graduate hires. Industry collaboration is vital to ensure the department's science and technology strategy addresses the key national security challenges that the United States will face in the future, everything from rising seas to a rising China. In partnership with academia, update the requirements of what a 21st century education includes to take into account modern warfare and business is fast-paced, occurring in complex and increasingly uncertain environments, and requires a holistic approach to health and fitness as part of the overall readiness matrix. An update will require rethinking and developing relevant coursework and experiences that prepare the talent pipeline for the complexity, ambiguity, and theoretical intricacies of the interconnected global environment. The country requires a workforce on and off the battlefield with the mental, physical, emotional, behavioral ability to face and cope with adversity, adapt to change, recover, learn, and grow from setbacks. In fact, the National Defense Strategy lays this out as a strategic imperative. I'm reminded of the story about General Dwight Eisenhower. He thought of his training and his experience, and he understood his formal military education and self-study of historic and strategic theory would only partially prepare him for the complexity, ambiguity, and theoretical intricacies of leadership. Through his education, hands-on training, and staff assignments within the War Department, Eisenhower was transformed from soldier to strategist. In addition, we must recognize that technology skill requirements are not just for STEM students. A few months ago, a senior director at Gartner who advises organizations on these trends wrote, "The demand for digital skills continues to surge in IT, but the fastest growth is occurring in non-traditional functions." And it's not just happening in Silicon Valley tech companies, but across all industries and regions. Gartner's talent neuron analysis of recent U.S. job postings provides the clearest snapshot of the seismic changes that are happening. Consider this. The top 5 non-IT functions account for nearly 75% of the demand for digital skills. Think about that for a moment. With demand for digital skills driving hiring requirements across non-IT jobs, we need to change how we're preparing business and humanities students on the skills that are required. New challenges require new solutions. And academia needs to change the mindset of their role in preparing digitally enabled citizens. This is whole academy issue, not limited to STEM fields. And even as a lifelong advocate for STEM education, I can tell you there's an overemphasis on increasing enrollments in STEM programs as a panacea. To close the government and industry talent pipeline gap, there needs to be realignment of coursework and degree requirements, but most importantly, how academics approach their responsibility in the talent development ecosystem to meet the workforce needs of today and tomorrow. I've spent a significant amount of my professional life working at the intersection of academia, industry, and now government. And it's from this vantage point that I see a unique opportunity for academia to collaborate with these other stakeholders to make progress on the punch list. There's a method from the modeling and simulation community that has great potential for academia to play a significant role in shaping digitally savvy citizens from all majors to meet the neurodiverse skill needs required by our economy and national security interests. The idea is to implement digital twin methods that are models of real life situations or solutions where students have a boot camp-like opportunity to work through a variety of what-if decisions and evaluate how each contributes positively or negatively to the desired outcome. Think of digital twin like the experiential benefit of an internship, and with more significant or advanced responsibility and zero risk to the host. Anytime students and early career professionals can experience making big decisions and seeing what happens because of their choices, they also learn how to manage their mental, physical, and emotional reactions. So while the advantages of the digital twin method are safety, reduced costs, risk, and reduced training time, it also provides the forum for cultivating the behavioral resiliency attributes required of our workforce. So with government and DoD partners, a culture of innovation needs to permeate all units and chain of commands. This is a critical requirement of changing the way the DoD does business. Problem sourcing and experimentation should be a standard operating procedure. An empowered environment where everyone feels that they can say, I think there's a better way, or what about, will ultimately make the warfighter safer and more effective. A solution cannot be found and ultimately adopted if the problem was never elevated and the infrastructure of problem solvers is lacking. Another benefit of instilling a culture of innovation in the military is a positive effect it will likely have on the organization's reputation. With an actual shift from a rigid, don't question the status quo mentality to one that is based on valuing experimentation and innovation, it's possible to shift the perception of a civilian career in the DoD to become an employer of choice among top STEM graduates. Opportunity for the Department of Defense to identify creative methods and levers of the federal government, such as student loan forgiveness and higher education benefits, to address recruitment and retention barriers, such as compensation and other lagging indicators. So how can we accomplish this together? The DoD requested an assessment on this topic, and the findings showed the single greatest contributing factor to a team's success was proximity and frequency by which people were able to see each other and physically connect, a finding we've seen reinforced through our programming at Ensign. This concept's been developed at universities like Georgia Tech, where their Tech Square has the highest density of startups, corporate innovators, and academic researchers in the entire southeastern United States. Clusters of partners benefit from the proximity, the interaction with other startups, researchers, labs, venture capitalists, and the Georgia Tech students. Like other innovation districts across the country, it's urban, walkable, and highly connected to encourage partnerships. The implementation of a similar concept can mitigate the Department of Defense image of being monolithic, opaque, and impenetrable to startups and small businesses with complex, confusing, and inefficient contracting procedures. By establishing physical spaces apart from military installations and embedded in venture ecosystems, which are designed to deepen relationships between academia, industry, private capital, and the DoD, these collision centers will foster technology refinement, coaching, and the integration of solutions between the warfighter and sources of innovation. For example, the Central Florida Tech Grove is centered in the heart of the United States defense modeling, simulation, training, and human performance development industry. Representing over $7 billion in program spending each year, they have an innovative physical and virtual presence. Tech Grove facilitates the connections, discussions, and workshops that lead to accelerated adoption of new ideas to solve some of the most challenging questions facing the training and preparation of soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, and guardians. Tech Grove is the nation's only innovation center specifically created to foster collaboration with the acceleration of novel, non-traditional modeling, simulation, training, and human performance solutions to the national defense partners at Team Orlando. Ensign plans to establish an interconnected network of these types of regional facilities called Mission Accelerator Centers, MAC for short, with the purpose of building enduring civilian-military innovation partnerships across the United States, broadening where innovation occurs. By the very nature of their locations, each MAC will reflect the unique nature of their respective region's ecosystem, academic expertise, private capital market, startup community, and DoD mission partner needs. These MACs will create opportunities for the DoD to work directly with problem solvers, especially non-traditional sources of innovation, to rapidly field technologies that get aligned with mission gaps. And this approach supports the notion that innovation is the new battlefield and fosters the rapid evaluation of technologies, faster and lower risk acquisition, and a greater ability to keep pace and exceed adversarial advances in innovation. Finally, we need to support a perception-shifting mindset that values national service careers as highly, or more so, as careers in the Fortune 500 companies. We can do this by exposing young talent to DoD internships and fellowship opportunities and bringing DoD problems into the classroom for experiential problem solving. Ensign supporting this mindset to help DoD leverage these new problem solvers. We look forward to working with you to develop this talent pipeline for the Department of Defense. Thank you.